The next thing on our agenda tonight would be to go into a closed meeting, but rather than to do that, I know that we have at least one party in attendance who wanted to address the council tonight, and so the public comments, I would move forward to take care of that before we go into a closed meeting. So, public comments. Please identify yourself and your address.
Mayor Mackey and council members, I'm Patty Murto. I am a resident of Esko. I am the co-host of Harry's Gang for about the last 10, maybe more. Somebody told me it was darn near 20. I don't remember actually. But I bring to your attention, I handed it out ahead of time, a document that I fell upon, and it took me probably 2 hours of homework to recognize and realize that you guys should have probably done yours. There is a joint powers agreement entered into in June to July of 2016. That's only 3 years ago. It lays out the authority for Cat 7 and cable TV in Cloquet, Esko, Carleton, and Scanlon. It is to ensure equitable and reasonable rates and service levels. You go to members of the board of directors, voting members. A director shall serve until the successor is appointed and qualified, which means all of those who are now seated are actually still members. Go to page 5, the powers and duties of the commission. Section 3, the Cable Commission shall assume all authority and undertake all tasks necessary to coordinate, administer, and enforce the franchise with the Mediacom. You go to page 6, under Section 6, the Cable Commission may employ such other persons it deems necessary to accomplish its powers and duties. Such employees may be full-time, part-time, or a consulting basis as the Cable Commission determines. Section 9 on page 6, the Cable Commission may also accept gifts, apply for grants, use grants, and dispose of money or property received or a grant in accordance to the terms. Section 10, the Cable Commission shall cause an annual independent audit. Section 13, the Cable Commission shall assume all responsibility for community access television programming within and the geographic area of the participating members. The Cable Commission, Section 14, may provide funds, support services, and the use of equipment and property to a designated entity, provided that that title to all equipment property shall not pass to any designated entity without prior approval of all members of the commission. Page 8. The position of Secretary-Treasurer shall be vested in the City Administrator of the City of Cloquet, who will be responsible for all financial transactions of the Cable Commission. Section 5 on page 8. The Secretary-Treasurer of the City and the City Administrator will serve as fiscal agent without compensation. Page 9. Section 4, a budget will be set by the Cable Commission. Such budget shall be deemed approved by a member unless the member gives notice and withdraws. Those are the applicable points. I noticed that you have a cable access budget that under the terms of the agreement you don't have the power to do. I also understand in this budget that there are funds that are being taken out for administration in the City of Cloquet that are actually in excess of the Cable Commission's employee at the present time. 25% is my understanding, and the Cable Commission employee is about 28, 29 right now. So what I'm saying is, number one, you didn't have the authority to give up our station headquarters and our studio in the school. You did not have the authority to cut Eric Lippinen's time to halftime and to take away benefits. You didn't have the authority to spend $38,000 or $37,000 in cable television money to install your beautiful live streaming that we were told as Harry's gang that this was going to be our new studio. And it wasn't until Monday when I went to ask to be appointed to the commission that I had heard existed that I was given this document by Esko, who informed me that they had attended meetings prior to Aaron coming on board in the city of Cloquet, that they had attended meetings with Brian. Brian had called meetings of the Cable Commission, and they had attended. So I'm asking you to, as quickly as you possibly can, reinstate Eric Lipponen as the administrator of Cat 7 TV because you didn't have the authority to demote him in the first place. Number two, you might as well throw this budget away because the Cable Commission sets the budget based on Cable Commission fees, and you need to think about where your funding is going to come for your top 3 administrators that are taking money out of the Cat 7 fund because according to the Joint Powers Agreement, you don't have that authority either. And the commission is the only person, the only entity that has the authority to enter into any contracts for Cat 7. I would like for you to reinstate the studio at the school, and I don't know how hard that's going to be. But if I noticed in this document that we've had Cat 7 studios for free for 35 or so years when Grandpa Newby started it in the first place. I have a call into Russ Smith, who is one of the only calls I haven't had a return phone call back from in my researching of this document. But I have talked to the city of Scanlon. The former mayor of Carlton is here, who is the signatory to this document. I met with the people in Thompson, and they became very much aware of this. And I'm sorry, Jana, but they didn't get it in January when Jana wrote the big story. But they did get it Friday when Pete Radosevich repeated an email from Aaron verbatim in his article saying that the other entities were welcome to come and use Cat 7 live streaming for themselves. And they thought that was a pretty big slap in the face, considering they hadn't heard anything about losing the studio, losing Eric. They had not been called to any meeting, and they have had no notice of any of the actions that have taken place. So I would suggest, I'm not a member yet. I'm hoping to become one because Esko only has 1 and they're allowed 2. You're allowed 3. Carlton is allowed 2. Scanlon is allowed 2. Marshall Johnson was fit to be tied, so you guys all know Marshall, I'll bet. He's a little interesting to deal with when he's mad, but I've dealt with him in the past. So if your budget for your live streaming includes Cat 7 money, I would make you aware that unless the Cable Commission grants you that authority, you don't have it. Do you have any questions of me? Aaron, I'm assuming you had no clue that this document existed.
Well, so the interesting part is, yes, I have to look to see if the city approved it or not. I don't have record. We'd have to look at our minutes.
You have Mayor Halbeck's signature.
I know,
on
but
this.
we have to look at the minutes to make sure the council approved it for one. But yeah, I mean, I guess obviously our city ordinance was never changed in 2016. If the council approved this in 2016, I'm not saying they did not, but if they did, our city ordinance has never been updated. All we have in there is our basic Cable Commission things. And then I guess my question is that in 2017 and 2018, the 2 budgets that I wasn't involved in, when those were approved, I'm assuming the Cable Commission had no role in those budgets whatsoever.
I don't think that they knew all the power they had either till I told
Yeah,
them.
well, and that's the question. I mean,
But you were the one who took the action that awakened a sleeping giant that now you have to deal with.
Well, and
you
exactly.
have to try to put back very quickly because there's damages here.
But the issue would be is honestly, I mean, moving forward, the decisions that were made for the 2019 budget, this year's budget, which as you're discussing with Eric in his position, and then the cable studio
I
here
would
and
recommend
things.
that you hire Eric back pretty quickly because every day that goes by puts you in further jeopardy of
Well, the
retaliatory
question would be
action.
I haven't had a chance to read this yet. I mean, generally speaking, a joint powers agreement is creation of basically a quasi-governmental unit. I mean,
Well, and-
you should be, there should have been operations immediately. I mean, usually you file a joint powers agreement with the state. I mean, it's set up
I mean,
as
you
a
can make
fourth thing.
whatever argument you want, Aaron, but the document is there, and these people met until the day you came.
I never had any record of meetings up to I started in October of 2018. So my question would be.
In 2017, there's an agenda on your website.
Right. So there's one on there, but my question would be is, again.
I didn't see any minutes.
Right. I'm confused by it too, because we have no record here
Well, that's
that
you
you
guys'
set
job,
the,
because
you're
you're the person who's supposed to be doing that.
Right, exactly. And we have no record of it.
Well,
so
the others
we
are
made
waiting
the
for you
decisions
to call a
based off
meeting.
of what we have set. But again, this is something the council is going to need to know if the joint powers agreement was approved by the council, if it's in effect or not, because basically it does create a different unit that should be operating on a very regular basis.
This should have
that
been,
hasn't
and it
been.
was. Aaron, you need to know that this entity did operate on a regular basis until 2017.
Right. And I don't know, and again, like I said, I started at the end of 2018, and I worked off of what we had been doing historically without this document showing up anywhere. Because generally speaking, if you have a joint powers, you're operating under a joint powers agreement.
You know, they don't call me the Dragon Lady for nothing. I earned that name.
So, once again, the council will have to find out if the council approved it, if everyone else approved it, where it stands, if it was filed with the state, all
I don't
those
know.
sort of
You know,
things.
Aaron, this organization, long before you adhered to this document, and maybe Kitty wants to speak to it because I wasn't here.
But I guess that's where I'm confused, because if I would have came in and this would have been being adhered to, I think it would have continued. But again, I had no
Aaron,
history of
I'm not
this.
sure, because we were coming down pretty heavy on the council and you and the cops on Harry's gang. And there's a part of me, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but there's a part of me that thought, good riddance. But we've now been off the air almost 5 months, and it's time. And Eric has to be full-time in order to get that station back up and running.
Well, the conversation about employment and those sort of things will have to come either from the council again, or
Well, it may,
If-
but
if
you
it's-
don't
if
have the
it's-
authority to have it.
it's
So.
if it's from the commission, but we have to verify kind of these sort of things. But I don't disagree with you. But again, like you said, it was possibly up and operational, but until 2017, and I don't know what happened after that.
Do you know,
that
it's
came
like
about.
those sleeping giants, Aaron, where everybody thought things were going pretty cool, copacetic, until we had a newspaper who reported on things. Because Harry's gang wasn't on the air anymore. And when she started to report on things, the other entities started to think, oh my God, things aren't running the way they used to run.
Well, and again,
and
that's
that's when their hackles went up.
right,
That's when
and that's
they
fine.
realized-
It would have been nice if somebody would have came forward with this document at some point, because we don't seem to have it.
I got it Monday.
Yeah, that's good.
So,
the council needs to review it. We need to determine. We'll have to talk to. Looks like Yetka put it together. Talk to Yetka about what was approved and when.
Halbeck signed it. If you guys, there is a withdrawal portion here.
Yeah.
But you can withdraw, but then all the money gets run by the other members of the commission.
Well, and that's the interesting part, because the franchise agreement's signed by the city, not by the commission.
Yes,
So that's where we have. It's odd to me because there
you're
is a
the
separation.
fiscal agent, and
But
you're
there is
named
a
the fiscal agent in this document.
But there's a separation there, and that's where the issue would be too, because the franchise agreement technically should be approved by the JPA as well, if they have control over finances. Because as a city, we can't give up control of finances of something like that. But if they're approved
you
by
don't
it,
have control, Aaron. You never had control. So
But I've been here 15 years,
Uh-huh.
and the city council has always, since I've been here for 15 years, set the budget.
right.
And
I understand
the
that.
commission hasn't been involved to that level that you're talking about.
But the commission
So-
was supposed to.
And I know that they met maybe quarterly, maybe
4 times a year.
Not all every year, though. I know there were years that were past that they had not met at all. So
My
I'm just
first-
telling you what I know, and that's all I know, okay?
Well, and Pete told me that he thought he was a commission member, but I don't see any place where his name was was on any commission documents, and he said a couple of them would meet. Well, they were only Cloquet people that didn't involve the other entities at all. So you've got some homework to do, and you've got some fixing to do, and I'm hoping that the superintendent gives us back our space.
I guess where we're standing now is that the council we need to talk with our city attorney who drafted this to find out if it was approved or not by the council, if the other entities approved it, and kind of then what that impact is one way or the other.
Yeah.
I know Kitty wants to say something.
Clearly, if it is a joint powers that provides the financing through the MediaCom franchise fees, we have to also set up then a method for that too, because the joint powers agreement should have been the signers on that franchise agreement then. Because my assumption would be is that right now there's separate franchise agreements with the townships.
No, there's not. There's one franchise agreement, and in the joint powers, you as the administrator and the city of Cloquet are named the fiscal agent.
So the franchise agreements are generally with the individual governmental units. But if it's a case where this JPA is there, we should look at modifying that franchise to make sure they match up too then. So I guess we have to go back to Yetka to find out what's been going on with it and see from there.
Yeah, and it's my understanding, I think Patty maybe knows this too, but I think that Frank Yetka was a cable
He was a cable,
commissioner.
he was actually, according to Pete, and I don't know this for sure, but he told me that Frank was the cable commission chair. Now, I would see that as a conflict of interest, that your city attorney is the chair, and that it hasn't met, and you've taken these actions that don't comport with the joint powers agreement, so we've got some issues.
So we will research. And okay.
I think we need to reconstitute the cable commission, for one thing. If they want to have some say, they have to have a commission.
There
And-
are members, they
but-
just have
but
to be
it's-
called, yes.
I've been on the council since 2012, and I religiously looked at the meeting minutes from everything, planning commission, you name it, and it was routinely the cable commission that had the least amount of information on the website. And I'm just saying that. That's my experience. And that's been 7 years. And so I think we need to get the commission back organized again, or operating, and have representation like you're talking about. But there hasn't been. And this issue with employment, I think, brought everything to a head. And I don't think we need to lose our heads over it. We need to try to get this back organized, find out if this JPA is valid, if we passed a resolution, whatever, and get things back on track.
The JPA is valid.
Well, like Aaron said, we don't know if we voted on it. I don't know.
And that's my question. I mean, we have council members that were here at that time that don't remember voting
was
for
not
this.
a
I have to
vote,
check the
yeah.
minutes to verify because this is not something that we've ever had that anybody's been working off of. So it has to be verified.
It was a time where we had a lot on our plate too, so something might have slipped by. So
I don't, as far as,
Talking the superintendent into giving the studio back. We need a studio.
okay, well, I think we're going to leave it at there. That's spot for tonight. But thank you for bringing it forward. It was,
I know you were stunned.
well, I've heard nothing about the cable commission during my 9 years here, other than I thought there were 3 people from Cloquet, and that was it. And people would talk about Jim Hagan being on a very, very long time, and of course the commission didn't meet often, but Jim was on there, I guess, for 30 to 40 years, is what I'd heard. But it was a nondescript group that there was no regular council talk about.
As long as
Thank
things
God.
flow smoothly, nobody makes any waves, things keep flowing smoothly. When you start rocking a
Yep.
boat, it all falls apart.
Well, it can. So anyway, I think we'll do with that tonight. At this point, we do need to go into.
Rod,
Yes.
can I say one thing? Just
Yeah.
go back to the donation.